a few more minutes. Now, did we get a response from DOT? Is anybody from DOT showing up tonight, or?
Arnab, I believe, is not going to be here tonight, correct?
Right. So, I believe he's not.
Yeah, he said that he was not going to attend.
He will attend, I believe, the second PIC meeting, which is probably going to be a little more lively. And then I believe John was not going to attend from DVRPC.
Correct. John's not going to be here tonight either.
So I think we are pretty much,
Small group. And then Jason, I'm not sure if anybody wants to give Jason a call while we.
Jason's here.
Oh, is he? Oh,
how you guys doing?
Hey, Jason.
Jason,
Not used to you being this quiet.
Promote you to make you a presenter. Not that you need to be, but I'll go ahead and do that.
You're really kissing up to him, aren't you?
I'm making sure he has the official title he deserves, right?
Oh.
Well, thanks for joining, everyone. We're going to get started at about 6:05. We're going to let a few more people join us here this evening.
Out of curiosity, how many people were invited to this meeting, and that are residents?
Good question. We sent out, Patty, you may know how many mailings we distributed. Ballpark number?
We distributed, well, it was about 600 in the mail and a total of 1,000 postcards.
Yeah, several hundred postcards were distributed at the township building, at the public library, and again, 600 were mailed to residents.
And on top of that, we had the lawn signs, we had the social media posts with the county, with the town.
Newspaper advertisement. Yeah.
And out of all that, 20 people showed up, and there's a good chunk of you that are working for the township or county. Man.
Well, the meeting will be recorded and posted online and will be available for comment for the next 30 days. So there's plenty of time to engage your neighbors and to engage the community to continue to provide feedback for the project. So
well, I appreciate that. Yes, thank you.
Hey, Tom, before we get started, the chat function is turned off. Can you turn the chat on?
I can click around and find a few buttons. It might take me a moment, but I can turn the chat on. The Q&A box is available. Will that suffice, or you'd rather see chat?
No, Q&A should work, but it's not available for this event. At least I'm not seeing it.
No, it's not. The Q&A should be. You're not seeing that? Start a discussion?
No, everything's turned off. Q&A is not available for this event. Turn it on from meeting options.
Okay, let me go ahead and do that for us before we begin then.
That's strange because I can see it.
Yeah, I can as well, but
maybe it was my invite.
Right here, Q&A.
Tom, the Q&A is working. You can see it now.
Maybe it's just me.
No, I can't imagine it would be. I can go ahead. I mean, I can start a discussion, but I'm gonna go ahead and double check the settings. Just give me a minute here, and I'll go ahead and do that.
Are you in the app or online?
I am in the app.
Good.
Well, maybe that's what it is. Check.
Okay. Well, we should be okay, I guess. Tom, if you can do that, I'll get started.
Sure, go for it.
Okay, just turn everything off.
One in our mailbox?
Okay. Okay, we're going to get started here. Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for attending our Public Information Center this evening. My name is Matthew Zakowski, and I'm a principal planner here at Mercer County, helping to co-manage this project with our partners from the County Engineering Division. With us tonight, we have some other county staff members who I'd like to introduce as well. So we have our Director of Planning, Maria Connolly. We also have on the call Mr. Bazit Muzaffar, who's our county engineer. We have Mr. Jason Mildenberg, our assistant county engineer, who's co-managing this project with us on the engineering side of things. We also have Ms. Caitlin Skasipek, our traffic engineer. And last but definitely not least, we have Mr. Matthew Lawson on the call tonight. I don't believe we have anybody from the administration. At least I didn't see anybody, but they are also part of the county project team. Okay, so that's everybody on the county side. I don't believe we have anybody from DOT or DVRPC on the call today, but we are also working on this project in partnership with the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, as well as the New Jersey Department of Transportation. And last but not least, we also have our consultant, Michael Baker, who I will introduce momentarily. But before I do that, I'd want to do a little housekeeping and then do a quick introduction to our project and really talk about why we're here tonight. So first of all, please be aware that this meeting is being recorded. Both the audio and video are being recorded and will be posted on the county website. As a courtesy, I will ask that during the presentation, everybody mutes their microphones so we can clearly hear the presentation. This is especially important for those viewing the presentation later at home who cannot make it tonight. And Tom and Michael Baker team, you should have the option to mute if somebody forgets to mute themselves, if we're getting feedback. But we are going to be taking questions and comments from the public. That's a big reason why we're here tonight. Pretty much the main reason why we're here tonight, besides introducing the project. But we are going to save voice questions and comments until after the presentation. So please feel free to save those questions, those comments, and we will get to those after the presentations. Now, if you look at the Microsoft Teams application, you should be able to see the buttons at the top of the screen. When you get to the public participation portion of the meeting, you do have the ability as an attendee to raise your hand and turn your microphone back on. Also, feel free to keep your video on, but for those of you having internet problems at home, if the presentation is lagging, it does help to turn the video off and get a more stable connection. And if you are comfortable, please feel free to enter your name and affiliation into the chat. You're not required to do so, but it does help Tom and his team prepare notes and spell names from the meeting. So I'm sure they're gonna definitely appreciate that. And lastly, the chat button is near the middle of the screen, and the chat box is to the bottom right of the screen. There's also a Q&A button, and you can type a written question or comment at any time while we go through the presentation, and we will return to those and address those after the presentation. So we'll have the county staff and Baker team ready to answer everything after the meeting. So that covers basic housekeeping. I'd like to really start off thanking everyone for taking the time out of your busy schedules to attend our meeting tonight. I know many of you could be doing a multitude of things, especially on a nice night like tonight. So thank you for coming out, learning about the project, talking about the project, and really most importantly for getting engaged in the community. So on our agenda tonight is the Arena Drive and South Broad Street Safety Study. This is a multimodal safety project which will study both the roadways to determine how we can improve safety on the roadway and how to improve these two corridors for residents and visitors of the community. Now, as many of you know, these roadways have slightly different histories associated with them. South Broad Street is one of the oldest roads in the county, and its current alignment, more or less, has been roughly in existence since the founding of the country. It was a key connection from the city of Trenton to the villages of Crosswick to Allentown, so it's got quite a bit of history. Now, Arena Drive, on the other hand, was built much later and really got to its size and alignment in the post-war suburban boom. So back in 1952, McGalliard Elementary School was built to educate the new baby boomer generation, and at the time, Arena Drive really only ran from Olden Avenue to roughly where the school sits now. It wasn't until the mid-1950s that Arena Drive was extended eastward to continue on to White Horse Avenue, and it wasn't until the late 1950s that it would go on to connect all the way down to South Broad Street. Now, at that time, and in the years following the construction, the suburban boom was in full effect. The former gardens and farms and orchards in the area all became single-family homes and suburban developments with some commercial businesses sprinkled in. And since that time, the road has more or less stayed the same since its original design and construction. Now, at that time, when the road was designed and built, it was intended as a higher speed suburban arterial meant to get drivers, quickly across parts of Hamilton. And since that time, some 60 years later, the area looks much different. We've had significant development come in, fill in the remaining undeveloped areas. There's more housing, more stores, more commercial enterprises, and we've really had more regional development that's pushed the urban boundaries since that time. And we also saw the development of Interstate 195 back in the 1970s, which actually demolished a part of the Lakeside Park neighborhood and other neighborhoods back in the 70s. A couple houses here and there, but ultimately there was a lot of residential being taken away. And we also saw Interstate 295 extend across Hamilton Avenue in the mid 1980s and the early 1990s, which was a significant change in the community as well. And it was really those projects that cut off a lot of neighborhoods in Hamilton and created a lot of new barriers that didn't exist before, especially for those who didn't drive, especially our younger and older residents, people who would walk, people who would bike. And it also placed interstate ramps onto Arena Drive, which may have helped push fast-moving traffic into the community. And now that the interstate ramps were constructed, they're pretty much up against McGalliard Elementary School in the existing neighborhood, and it's really difficult to get across between the neighborhoods. So with that and other changes in the area, Arena Drive essentially transferred and transformed from a local Hamilton roadway to a more regional connector with major barriers between the neighborhoods. Speeds and traffic increased, and so have concerns with safety and well-being of the community. And that is part of what brings us to why we are here today. We're here today to start the process of studying Arena Drive and South Broad Street to really determine a path forward for the next stage of the road's history, and really how to find and how to try to fix some of the problems with these roadways and create a path on moving forward for a better roadway. Safer, more accessible, multimodal, and more in line with what the community needs and wants. So the county has initiated a local concept development study, hired Michael Baker, a firm with offices in Hamilton Township, to identify the problems and deficiencies of the roadway and help us look at how to redesign the roadway to accommodate the needs of the community and increase mobility and safety for residents and visitors. Now, the caveat for tonight's meeting is that at this point in the project, we do not have any proposals or concepts to show you, which I know may be disappointing to some in the audience, but we will get to that in the coming months. We're just beginning the project. What we really want to do now is come to the community, hear from you first before we really dig into the project. So we're aware of many of the problems here. Tom and his team are going to get into the meat of that in the presentation, but we also want to hear about the things you and the audience can tell us and may not be aware of, or we may not be aware of. So that and to hear your thoughts on the corridor, what you would like to see possibly. Now, we don't have an unlimited budget, and we need to work within the realms of reality. There's environmental regulations, right-of-way, physical constraints, but we want to know what you would like to see and what kind of changes could positively affect you and your day-to-day travels. That and the problems you've encountered on this corridor. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tom and his presentation. Thank you again for attending tonight, and with that, I'll turn it over to Tom.
Mr. Zakowski, thanks very much. I appreciate it. Good evening, everybody. My name is Tom DiBiase. I'm with Michael Baker International, and as Matt mentioned, we sit in the Hamilton office, right behind the Hamilton train station. I also lived for several years right off this corridor. I lived about 1,000 feet from the intersection of Tennyson Drive and Arena on Wirt Avenue. So I know this area quite well, and we're residents of this area and part of this community. Just want to say that going forward, and want to thank you for joining us this evening. Glad to have you on board, and welcome to our first stakeholders and public meeting for the Arena Drive and South Broad Street Local Concept Development Study. I'll go ahead and take us through this agenda today. We've performed our welcome and introductions. We've had our opening remarks. We've covered our meeting guidelines, and we're going to briefly start with a fun activity and review our public feedback process. And then we'll get into our project overview, where we're going to basically discuss the project goals, the location, some of the study materials that we've collected thus far, and also, most importantly, perhaps this evening, is to review the purpose and need statement for the project and our goals and objectives. So we're going to hear your input on that document in particular. We want to make sure that we are framing this project appropriately and that the public has input on that process. And then we want to introduce you to our community input survey, which is available on our website. We're going to encourage you to go visit that website and fill out that community input survey. It's a great way to get involved with the project. And then we'll open it up for Q&A and conclude with our key takeaways and next steps. So Miss Patty Codina is also supporting us from Connect the Dots, and Patty has arranged a Mentimeter activity for us to jump into here just to spur conversation as we start the meeting. So, Patty, if you perhaps I can, how should we go about launching it?
So hello everyone, I'm Patty. There should be, I added the link to the Q&A. I'm not sure if people are able to click on it, or if you see it. But you can also go to menti.com, and I will add the number that you can click on. If people are able to, are people able to click on the link in a Q&A? Usually you can do it in a chat, but I'm not sure about a Q&A.
I can visit it on screen, and we can work it that way as well. Let me do that real quick. And yes, I just want to make sure I think we're automatically recording. So recording is already taking place, which is good news. Let me go to menti.com and I'll share my screen and we can walk everybody through this just in case. You can certainly join us and visit menti.com and we can provide you the code. Here's a little bit of my response for this. As a former resident of this location, I'm going to reserve the right to respond. But can everyone see my screen here? The question is, how would you feel traveling along this street? And the photo that we have, why don't I showcase it here?
It's on the slide, and I also put the code number on the slide so everyone can access it that way if it's easier.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it in the Q&A, and I'm not seeing it in the chat or on the screen.
Yeah, I'm not
So,
either.
And I'm still saying that Q&A is not available for the event.
That's odd because I certainly see the Q&A and I can see my own post and I can also see a post by Bob, but I cannot.
Patty's post just came in at this exact moment for me, so it might just take a minute for it to load.
Sure, sure.
If you're
what's the
able to,
code, Tom?
and
What
the
is the code
code is 567392. And if you go back to the slide activity, Tom, the code is there.
Is that it there? 567392.
Mm-hmm.
Tom and Patty, I'm going to leave the meeting. I'm going to come back with a different link.
56739229.
I've also added it to the Q&A.
When you guys say traveling, do you mean by car, by foot, or by bike?
So there are three options. So we want you to imagine what it would feel like to ride a bike, to help your elderly neighbor cross the street, or to drive to work. And you can choose where you feel comfortable, whether you feel it's a very safe activity to do, you do it every day and you feel comfortable, or if this feels like a very unsafe activity, this was a mistake. So kind of where you land on the scale.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1 second, let's give it just half a minute and we can show the, Rob, you have a question?
Yes, I'm on that site, but it's not indicating where to put any code or anything.
If you clicked on the link, then it should you should be directly in the survey, and you can just respond.
I mean, I can toggle through one very safe, unsafe, right? But as soon as I hit submit, okay. I don't know. It didn't prompt me for once. That's all. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, the code is only if you go to menti.com, and I will share the results.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And this was just a very brief activity just to get you all in the mindset of why it is that we're all here, why this is an important activity. And so it sounds like riding a bike feels like a pretty unsafe activity on this particular intersection. There are no bike lanes, it's very wide. It also feels like next on the list is crossing the street with an elderly person, not super safe either. And then driving to work feels like the safest activity. So thank you all for participating. It was just to give us a sense, as Tom is walking us through the presentation, think about what your experience is on Arena Drive. If there are any intersections we missed, please put any input in the Q&A, and we are recording all of that to share with the design team. Thank you so much.
All right. So I'll take us through our meeting goals here. So of course, we're here to introduce the project to the stakeholders and to the public. And our mission is to review our existing conditions that we've collected for the corridor, and also to review our opportunities for improvements and to gather feedback from our stakeholders and the public on these key issues. So those are our meeting goals in summary. All right, we've already reviewed our meeting guidelines, so I'm going to go ahead and just note that the meeting will be open for 2 hours. If we cannot get to all our questions within that 2-hour period, this slide just moved forward one. We will the Q&A will end at 7:45, and next steps and closing remarks will take place then, and the meeting will close at 8. If there's any questions that remain, they can be submitted via the project email. So this is probably the easiest way to reach the project team after the fact, is to visit our website and then to go ahead and provide us input via our project email. That's arenabroadsafety@gmail.com. And you will be reminded that many times throughout the presentation, so don't feel the need to write that down just this moment. And you can reach our website at mercercounty.org/arenabroadsafety. All right, I'm going to move on, and we will cover. I basically have discussed this. These are the formal ways in order to provide feedback for the project would be to email us at arenadrivesafety@gmail.com. Excuse me, this is Arena Broad Safety. Someone go ahead and fix that for me if you don't mind. Mail a written letter to. You can also, if you choose to. If you'd like to submit your comment via a written mail, you can mail to Jason Bilderberg, our county project manager, at the address listed on screen there. And comments will be accepted either via the email or by mail from through Friday, November 22nd, 2024. And our meeting recording from today's presentation will be posted to that website, mercercounty.org/arenabroadsafety. All right, I'll move on. So this is a project overview. So the purpose of the project, Mercer County is conducting this local concept development study to improve safety and mobility for all users, including pedestrians, bicyclists, and transit riders. And the purpose of the project is to improve safety while establishing a multimodal transportation network that's safe, walkable, bikeable, and transit friendly. Now, we have spent a little bit of time on our study area map already. Important takeaways here is that it's a community roadway, and Mr. Zakowski laid this out quite nicely in an opening remarks. But it serves as a regional connector, but this is a community roadway first, and the proximity to McGilliard Elementary School and Yarville Heights Elementary School it really sends home that message to us as the project team that we need to find opportunities to make crossing this roadway as a pedestrian, bicyclist, transit user, or even as a motorist, more safe in the future. So we have we're going to continue through to discuss our local concept development study process. So we are in this first column, and we are going to perform that over the course of about a year, and we're about 6 months through. We're in the fall of 2024, and we're finalizing our purpose and need statement, and we're conducting our first round of public outreach here with our stakeholders and the public. After that is concluded, we convene to develop alternatives. So the project team develops alternatives to address our purpose and need and goals and objectives, and the feedback that we've received from the public and our stakeholders. And we develop we have another touch base where we come back and we meet with stakeholders to discuss those developed alternatives. And then we select a recommended preliminary preferred alternative, and we meet one last time with the public in the spring in order to present that preliminary preferred alternative before we complete our project through some reporting. And then the project graduates from local concept development to local preliminary engineering. Then eventually, once that process is complete, It graduates to another phase of final design. And after these processes are complete, we eventually enter construction. So as we stand right now, as this process will continue, we are several years from a construction date. And of course, this is our first opportunity for us to engage with stakeholders in the public to make sure that we shape the purpose of the project and our goals and objectives appropriately. So I basically reviewed this already, but so our first meeting in the summer of 2024 was to meet with local officials. We did so in, I believe it was July, and that was a meet and greet. We reviewed our project process and our schedule. And now today, in the fall of 2024, we are conducting our stakeholder and public meeting. And that's our public meeting number 1. And our mission, again, is to review our existing conditions and purpose and need statement. And finally, we'll move on to the winter and spring, where we'll conduct another round of outreach with our local officials, our stakeholders, and our public to present our homework on alternatives development and eventually our preliminary preferred alternative. And then, of course, we formally request resolutions of support from Hamilton Township and Mercer County before graduating the project to the next phase. Okay, so we'll continue to move on here. This is another look at community context. This is census data that shows us overburdened communities in the immediate vicinity of the project to show our low-income, minority, and homes with limited English proficiency. And the reason we show this on screen is because not only is New Jersey Department of Transportation, but also the county is committed to ensuring that funds are, because NJDOT funds the project and Federal Highway funds the project, they allocate funds and grant programs. They make sure that these are equitably distributed across the state, and that they meet the needs of our more vulnerable and traditionally underserved populations. And that's an important facet for this project to understand for our project team and for us to communicate to stakeholders in the public. Okay, I'll move on to our key issues. So essentially, our roadway design essentially enables speeding. And so because we have highway interchange ramps that come directly and meet Arena Drive and South Broad Street, these interchange ramps enable speeding. And wide cross sections at our intersections also reinforce this behavior. And below I-95, with a wide with very wide lanes, it reinforces this opportunity to speed. Roadway conditions are inadequate or feel unsafe to bicyclists. And unsafe pedestrian crossings throughout throughout the corridors, with long pedestrian crossings with either some deficient crossing equipment like pedestrian signal heads and refreshed crosswalk striping and the like. We also have large corner radii that makes pedestrian and bicyclist crossings difficult. And in some areas we have poor sidewalk conditions or deteriorated sidewalk, or we have disconnected pedestrian networks throughout the project as well. So we'll move on here. So this is essentially a look at how roadway design sort of enables speeding. Here's our highway interchange ramps. So this cross section suggests to motorists, and of course the favorable geometry for turning as you're coming off the interstate suggests to motorists that they're able to travel at high speeds. Secondly, we move to our intersections with wide cross sections. So, it's a long pedestrian crossing from one side to the other on many portions of this roadway. And then here we have our section below I-195, where we have a single direction roadway that's awfully wide. And again, it encourages and enables speeding to take place on the roadway. So we have a number of we have the intersections essentially noted here, and the purpose of the slide is to communicate the fact that there's opportunity, especially at these particular intersections, which are awfully wide, for us to slow the speed of through traffic, but also turning vehicles. So we have wide radiuses on many of these turns, and they allow for favorable turn geometries, and they decrease the opportunity for motorists to yield to pedestrians, bicyclists, transit users, or to perform their maneuver safely, likely on a road. So I'll move on. Here's to take a look at inadequate conditions for our bicyclists. Here's South Broad Street at Highland Avenue. This is right outside of our elementary school, of course, and Here, roadway conditions are essentially inadequate for bicyclists to travel throughout the corridor, and often bicyclists are found on the sidewalk as a result, because riding in the road is not safe or viable. So I'll move on here. So here's an example of some of these unsafe pedestrian crossings that we see throughout the corridor. Here's South Broad Street at Sunnybury Boulevard. You can take a look at how, rather how daunting the pavement cross section looks to cross from a pedestrian's perspective. And the fact that Sunnybury Boulevard does not have pedestrian signal heads to signal when to cross, and when the light will be turning red, it makes that crossing more difficult. And at Yorkville Hamilton Square Road, we have another section here where we have some rather large corner radii that make pedestrian and bicyclist crossings more difficult. So we identified a handful of intersections, including Tennyson, Bradford, Hempstead, Sunnybury, and Yardville Hamilton Square, where we have favorable geometry to turning maneuvers, which are unfavorable to safer driving conditions and more effective and easier crossing for road users. Here's just an example of some of the poor sidewalk conditions we see on the corridor. So we have a disconnected pedestrian network throughout the corridor. Here's an example of that at near Central Avenue. We see that repeated not only at Central, but between Central and Reeves, near Colonial Avenue, and essentially there's an unfavorable pedestrian situation under the I-195 interchange as well. All right, I'll move right along. This is a great look at our crash hotspots on a heat map. This is basically the deeper the red that color becomes, the higher crash density we have along the corridor. This data is from 2017 to 2021. That's a 5-year period. And what you see below, and it's a little difficult, but I can walk us through a few of these intersections. You can see that essentially this graphic here shows the number of crashes on the y-axis, and on the x-axis it shows you the corridor. So here's Arena Drive, and we see we have this is going to correspond to these crash hotspots that you see above. So that's South Holden Avenue, at Tennyson, at Reeves, Bradford, Whitehorse Avenue, Gropp, and Hempstead. So a good number of our signalized and unsignalized intersections along that stretch. And then for Broad Street, we have here Highland Avenue and Coleridge, as well as Sunnybury Boulevard and Yardville Hamilton Square Road. So it's important for us, we analyze crash data. We take a look at crash contributing factors, as well as crash type and other circumstances around all of our crashes, especially focusing on our fatal and severe injury crashes. And we draw conclusions from those as we build alternatives for solutions for the corridor. So an example of that appears here. So here's how we use data to inform solutions. So here we have a look at fatal and serious injury crashes on the corridor. And what we can see here is that our 2 of these crashes are pedestrian crashes, so 50%. And our lighting condition for 3 of our 4 crashes were in dark conditions. So some examples that we may draw from data like this would be that we have inadequate street lighting in certain locations associated with these crashes that would need to be addressed through the project, and that we have issues around pedestrian safety and pedestrian crossing countermeasures and improvements should be deployed at specific intersections in order to solve these issues as well. So that gives you an example as to how we approach the project and how we use data to inform our solutions. Okay, I'll move on. So here's our opportunities. We have a number of traffic signals along the corridor, and we have plenty of opportunities at these locations to improve crossing conditions, to address our geometry on the roadway, and to improve conditions. So I've basically covered this point to date. So I'll, in the interest of time, I'll move on. But this is an example of some of the signalized intersections. Of course, these are hotspots for crashes, and we expect to address these throughout the project. Here's some opportunities for pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. The map is showing you a couple key areas where pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure is essentially is not available for longitudinal travel along the roadway. So underneath our underpasses here at 295 and 195, conditions are either they're unfavorable due to the wide cross section or due to the fact that we have degradation in our sidewalk, or we have a path that's inadequate to fit both a pedestrian and a bicyclist at the same time, so on and so forth. We've also identified Grop Lake, knowing that we have a fixed cross section across a bridge over Grop Lake. That's also a potential problem area. Our mission here is to find better ways to build out pedestrian and bicycle network along Arena Drive and South Broad Street, and we want to make sure that we address our particular key points here at these interchanges, as where crossings are unsafe, and as well as Grop Lake, where our cross section is constrained. Again, as part of the project, we're investing in pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, and that includes off-street bicycle facilities and pedestrian facilities. So that's essentially imagine yourself a wide sidewalk, which is known in the industry as a shared use path in many cases, which is shared between bicycling and walking. So we're going to look to establish off-street facilities wherever possible. And as for on-street facilities or areas where our bicyclists or pedestrians need to cross the roadway, we're going to look at intersection elements to improve their safety in crossing. Okay, so I'll take us through to our purpose and need statement here. So, of course, the local concept development phase involves drafting this well-defined purpose and need statement. That's our first mission. And the statement will be used to develop and evaluate our potential, excuse me, it shouldn't say bridge alternatives, I apologize. It should say potential alternatives. So what informs here? Our community outreach, our data collection, environmental resources, and socioeconomic conditions all come together to form our purpose and need statement. And eventually our purpose and need statement defines our conceptual alternative selection. Look at that, changed in real time. All right, so our purpose, and I read this earlier, but I will repeat it again. The purpose of our study is to address safety deficiencies on Arena Drive and South Broad Street while establishing a multimodal transportation network that's safe, walkable, bikeable, and transit friendly. And on the next slide here, I'll give you an example. We can pause on this slide later and review this, but our mission here is to visit the text in bold. These are our goals and objectives. So we're here to address our roadway deficiencies to improve multimodal safety. That's our first goal up top. And we do this by implementing FHWA, that's Federal Highway Administration, their proven safety countermeasures. They have a suite of proven safety countermeasures that are available for us. And of course, we have extras that we're going to explore for the roadway in order to get proven, tried and true safety improvements for this roadway. Our fourth goal there, to implement complete streets and design solutions that improve pedestrian and bicyclist safety and create a continuous facilities along our roadways for pedestrians and bicyclists. And I will conclude with our last goal there at the bottom of the page. That's to avoid or minimize impacts to social, economic, or environmental resources. So here, when we talk about social economic, we're talking about the neighborhood, our neighbors, our residents, our business owners, our community. So our mission is to minimize our impacts while addressing our purpose and need. And the environment is, of course, included in that statement as well. Okay. I'll move on. So our community input survey, this is one of the best ways to get involved with our project. Completing our survey is a tremendous way to focus our efforts and to hear your feedback. So it's published today to the website. It's available again at mercercounty.org/Arena Broad Safety. So you navigate to that site, you scroll to the bottom, and I'll take us to that page in just a moment. You will see a link to fill out the survey. So we're requesting input on your experience traveling on the corridor, your relationship to the project corridor, whether you're a resident, you work nearby, your top issues, whether they be speeding, congestion, lack of safety, what have you. We want your feedback on project goals and your suggestions. And our results will be summarized and included in our project report, and we will again review them at future meetings. So we will review this at our next public meeting as well. So that essentially concludes our short presentation today. And we're going to open this up for feedback and Q&A. And I have a few reminder slides that I'll queue up while we discuss, but we're able to move into Q&A session. So I have two slides I'll switch between. This is our future meeting schedule, and of course our public feedback reminder, which of course we need to update this to say Arena Broad Safety, please. If someone can go ahead and do that. Thank you.
Rob, you have a question?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you. I appreciate that the county wants to address all of these safety concerns finally. But I want to know, what is the role the police department is going to play in any of this, because their lack of enforcing laws, particularly speeding, illegal U-turns, things like this, has caused a lot of these problems, as well as you mentioned, these extremely wide lanes, the highway, the access to the highway, etc. I don't ever, and I repeat, ever, see police presence on this road issuing tickets for speeding and reckless endangerment. Never. I would like to know that. I put it in the comments, but I want to say it out loud because it's being recorded.
Thank you for that comment. As part of the project, we are going to be reaching out to the police department. The police are definitely a key stakeholder in the process. We're going to be working very closely with them to, voice the concerns of residents, to make them aware of some of the concerns, and we'll definitely be keeping them in mind when we advance the project. Because ultimately, once we build it, we still need enforcement. Once we build everything, unless there's enforcement and police out there to make sure everything's safe, we're not going to have a safe condition like we hope to have.
Not to interrupt you, but yes, that's true. But they can start today. They don't need to wait for this project to start. They can start anytime now. I'm just saying that because it's the obvious, most common sense thing they can do. Put somebody on the road with a speed gun and be paying attention, because people do blow through these lights, especially during drop-off and pickup times with people's kids crossing that street going to these various schools.
Mm-hmm. Rob, is there a particular location you're more interested in on the corridor? Is there like a location that's more sees more speeding than other locations?
I live a stone's throw away from a Galliard. I used to live not too far from Yartville Elementary School, so I'm quite familiar with the Sunnybray intersection as well. Again, it's just, if you don't enforce small laws, people are just going to take it. You give them an inch, they take a mile. So, I mean, you have to enforce all laws, whether that's popular or not. Oh, well. But my opinion, again, I live very close to McGalliard. I see all kinds of reckless endangerment, people speeding. We have tons of 18-wheelers going up and down this road at all hours with little to no regard of the residents, let alone the other drivers on this road. And like I said, I have yet to see any police presence that is issuing tickets and really making it very clear that we are going to. I mean, you could pave the road in gold with the amount of money they could make issuing tickets. So I hope that other residents who are on this call or will view this feel the same way. And if so, please express your concern besides just myself.
Rob, we appreciate your feedback there. Yeah, I think another interesting, a great point to make here is that in our local officials briefing, of course, not only Hamilton Township's actively involved and very much tied to the project, and will issue resolution of support, and their police, fire, EMS, and their OEM services are all invited, and are key stakeholders in our project and are aware of what we're what we intend to do here for the roadway. Yeah, so we can move on to next questions now. I see a second hand raised. Is that Scott Sullivan?
I think Tammy Duffy was before me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tammy. I didn't see you there.
Oh, that's okay. No problem. Hi.
Go ahead, Tammy.
Is this part of the Street Smart program, or no? Because there's a whole program that the
Tammy, this is
Yeah.
Bianca, Mayor's
Hi.
Chief of Staff. No, this is a separate, totally separate project.
So my question would be, why wouldn't you guys work hand in hand with the township, right, of Hamilton, who is initiating this whole new Street Smart program, to make sure that what gets implemented in that program helps you, and I apologize for my dog barking, helps you with this development of your plan on this, because that's a state funded program that I'm very happy to see that Hamilton is going to start participating in, because I agree with what Mr. Riley said about how it's impossible to, it appears, to hold people accountable for speeding, for where we did put bike lanes in, like on Flock Road, people use it as a lane and it's for their vehicle versus bikes, and there's no enforcement of that happening. Where we did put new signage up, if you look at the on-ramps and off-ramps in this area that you're looking at, and then you look at the on-ramps and off-ramps throughout the entire municipality, you will find the same habitual issues and errors. So we really need to fix that, even though we kind of fixed them outside of where you guys are, Michael Baker, near the train station, where they put signage up, right? They put crosswalks up, they put ADA ramps. However, I challenge you to try to walk, if you're walking from your office to Quaker Bridge Road, and you tell me if you feel safe when you have to get around that one corner, because you can't see the cars coming flying around that corner. You really need a mirror on that side so you can see it. So I applaud that you guys are finally doing this, because we have had more than 10 deaths, pedestrian deaths already this year in Hamilton. And we absolutely need to focus on making Hamilton a safer place for pedestrians, for people on bikes, and in vehicles. So thank you.
Thank you, Tammy.
Tammy, thank you so much.
And Tammy, again, that was the street smart program.
Yeah, so that's, I can send you, if you want to, I'll put my email in the chat and I'll send you info on it, because I've been asking the mayor to implement this program for several years. And I'm so happy to see that we're finally focusing on this, because it's so needed. And I'll give you the gentleman who is in charge of it as well. That I know the township had a couple phone calls with that group. And he runs that program. He's actually a retired police officer and works with the state to run it. So I'll put my email in the chat, and then you can send me an email and I can send you info on it.
Yeah, great. Thank you. We'd be happy to hear about it, because we work closely with the TMA. The TMA does a lot of bike ped trans
and they're
advocacy.
part of it. Yeah, and they're part of it. So it would be good to create that synergy. Only helps everything.
Absolutely.
All right, I'll put it in the Q&A. The chat, it says the chat is turned off for the meeting, so I'll put it in the
Q&A can work.
Okay.
And I know Scott Sullivan had a question as well.
Yeah. So I want to thank you all as well for taking the time to reach out to the community on these issues and get feedback. I'd also like to echo similar things to other commenters, that this area of the road really doesn't feel safe as a pedestrian. I've gone on many runs down Arena Drive, and anytime you're crossing an intersection or crossing a road, it just feels very unsafe. You kind of have to dart around and just hope people are paying attention. I noticed, especially on the crash heat map, just how many accidents seem to be happening outside of the elementary schools, which seems especially concerning. I'm not a parent myself, but if I was, I couldn't imagine how scary that slide would be to me. So yeah, having a police presence for enforcement for especially those areas during school hours seems like a no-brainer. But at the same time, it's not realistic to always have a police officer present at the entire stretch. So the design of the road absolutely needs to act as enforcement for traffic laws as well. Those areas should be less comfortable to speed through and drive around. Drivers should have to, slow down and pay attention to their surroundings. So something like a raised crosswalk outside of those schools seems like a smart design decision. As far as other parts, I agree that the kind of underpasses of the interstates are also very difficult to get around. Oftentimes there wouldn't be sidewalks and there'd be a lot of broken debris in the streets, I assume from car accidents that don't get cleaned up. And so if somebody were biking on those, they could easily puncture a tire, which would further discourage people from, using those. Yeah, I appreciate the county looking at this. I hope they continue to work with the town to improve the safety, both on this stretch and on as many other stretches as they have authority over. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott.
Scott, thank you.
Yeah, in addition to this project, there are other local concept development studies that we're working on. So the county is very committed to Vision Zero, to safety, to complete streets. We are going to be making a lot of progress in the coming years on pedestrian and bike safety. So thank you for your comment.
Okay, we can move on to Michelle T.
Good evening. Thank you guys for having this meeting and inviting us. I live in the neighborhood of Arena Drive and South Broad Street. I'm in the neighborhood, I guess, in the development by Galliard Elementary, between Whitehorse and Arena. I find that Whitehorse should probably be in this study too, because that road is extremely dangerous. But I don't really see it much of an issue with Broad Street with all the traffic lights. I think it kind of really chops everything up. So you don't really have the speeding issue that you guys were talking about. I mean, from what I've seen, I've lived in this area my entire life. I learned how to drive at the circle, like I lived there. So I don't really see the issue on Broad Street as much as I see it on Arena. I can see McGalliard Elementary and Arena Drive from my front porch. I can hear the accidents from inside my house. There's so much contributing, and like what other commenters said, if you had police presence, this would alleviate a lot of your problems. Now, we are a law enforcement family here. I can empathize that the departments do not have the manpower to be policing the streets as much as I'm sure they would like to. But that's gonna alleviate a lot of these issues. And the other thing is I wouldn't really feel safe walking the streets, and not so much because of the traffic, because of the area. There's a lot of questionable things that go on and questionable people roaming around. That would make me feel unsafe being a pedestrian in this area. I've seen things that have happened that don't make me very comfortable. And the school, I don't understand how people just blow through all these lights. The other thing is, so where I live, there's a lot of side streets that go into Arena Drive. Some of them have traffic lights, some of them are just stop signs. People are illegally parked. People block intersections. They park at stop signs. People cut through from Broad Street to Arena. They cut through my neighborhood and they come flying through 40 miles an hour down my side streets, past my kids' bus stops with children standing there, not a care in the world. And they go barreling down from Broad to Arena to try to get to the highway access. The highway access, I think, is probably your biggest issue, being highway access right outside of an elementary school. You have it at 195 and 295, which is extremely irresponsible. But the way that people come through trying to commute and get in and out, they have no regard for the fact that somebody lives there, somebody's child lives there, somebody's grandmother lives there. It's somebody's walking their dog there. It's just not okay. And there are big trucks that park on these side streets that block the vision. I stopped a child from getting hit just last school year trying to cross the crosswalk, and there are like lawn mowing trucks, like commercial vehicles parked on a side street that never move, and someone came flying up Arena to get to Broad Street and could not see that child in the crosswalk because their vision was blocked, and if that child didn't stop, he would have been dead. So it's really just a lot of responsibility on the streets. That's really what it comes down to. Illegal parking, enforcing the laws we have. I'm not sure where narrowing the roads are going to make a difference, because people come flying off the highway and then they're at a traffic light and they're coming to a screeching halt. And I see that happen too, where people get rear-ended because there's so much going on coming right off a highway or right off of one of these county roads. So it gets scary when all these lanes got to merge into one, or all these lanes are going to on a 40-mile-an-hour road and then run right into a traffic light. You know, these are obstacles that I think are causing issues too. There's not a flow. It's not a consistent flow of traffic throughout the town. You know, and having that intersection at Arena and Whitehorse, I would never in a million years let my kids ride their bikes or anything around there. It's so scary. But you know, I know the law enforcement, the police in this area are doing the best they can with the resources that they have. You know, I'm really grateful for the county to actually care to do this, and I know the township does the best they can. I think we do have really good people working here. It's just a matter of everybody's got to be diligent and doing what they got to do. We probably just need more funding at the end of the day, but hopefully we can get this going in the right direction.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, with a lot of these comments, if there's a township related issue, I mean, we don't have jurisdiction over township roads, but we can pass along those comments. I mean, enforcement issues with the side streets, that's something that we can pass along to the town. I mean, if the town has the resources in the future, maybe it's something that we can work together with the county and get addressed. At least make them aware at the very least.
You know,
Michelle, I had a quick follow-up. Sorry, Tom.
Go ahead.
Michelle, you mentioned safety and that you didn't feel safe on certain parts of the corridor. Is that at all times of day, or would you say that's more at night? Is there like a lack of lighting?
I mean, I wouldn't be in certain areas on South Broad Street Arena Drive after dark. That is for sure. But I wouldn't say it's a lack of lighting. It's just, you know, we do have people who just shouldn't be doing what they're doing outside of some of these places. You know, there's people who hang out outside of Aldi and just hang out there and make me nervous on Broad Street. I go to Cougar Park a lot. I love that park. I know that's not part of your county jurisdiction, but I use Arena Drive to get to Cougar Park. And as you're going to that area, it gets a little sketchy. There are people in the park who are sleeping there. There are people in the park who are probably dealing things they shouldn't be, but they're walking in from Arena Drive, from Olden Avenue. They're all coming from that area. You know, you see people walking that I don't know, that just make me uncomfortable as a younger female walking around. So I don't know. I've never seen anyone bike down any of these roads. I know a lot of people in my own neighborhood who go out jogging and running, that probably utilize some of these roads to cut through, but for the most part, everybody stays within the neighborhood. Nobody really goes down these roads for multiple reasons, for personal safety, for safety of, you know, driver safety, that kind of thing. But I mean, in my neighborhood, kids walk to McGalliard Elementary all the time, and some kids walk by themselves. They don't have the privilege to have a parent walk with them. So that makes me so nervous.
I have two quick things to add to sort of follow up on some questions. We were fortunate enough to be out on several field visits, and on one of them, we happened to notice there was a bicyclist who was carrying a small cart who was directly on Arena Drive. And of course, this is during the day on a bright sunny summer day. So we do know there are folks that do bike the corridor. I just wanted to mention that real quick. And then also, it sounds like what I'm hearing, Michelle, and this is echoed from other folks, is that, you know, speeds are excessive, especially on the interstate, and then they immediately are dumped onto Arena Drive or South Broad Street. And because of that fact, excessive speeding is happening on approach to, let's say, the next adjacent intersection or beyond. So some sort of gateway treatment to signal to drivers that the road context has changed from interstate to local road, something that's important and perhaps will go a long way in addressing some of the issues that we see on a corridor. That comes to mind for me in the transportation professional field here to examine, and I think it's something that the project team is keen to investigate further.
Right, but then you have, like, if you get off 195 at South Broad Street, you're being dumped onto a road, obviously it's much lower speed limit, into 2 lanes, and then you're merged into 1 lane in front of a traffic within a quarter mile right by Yarville Heights Elementary School. I don't understand that's been that way. I went to Yarville Heights Elementary School. I've lived there my whole life. Like, that backs up to cause so much traffic, and the way it bends, you can't even see how much traffic you're getting into when you come off that road sometimes. So you're coming to like a screeching halt. And I think there's some people who panic and stop short, and that probably attributes to some of your issues as well.
Yeah, and Michelle, that's a problem across the country. I mean, when these interstates went in, they put them in neighborhoods, they cut across neighborhoods, they put these ramps right into suburban streets, into city streets, and people speed. So I mean that
Yeah.
we're definitely going to be looking at ways to calm the traffic down before it gets to the county route.
And especially to our elementary schools. My goodness.
Yeah, I mean McGalliard was built before the interstate. I mean, I doubt that they would put the elementary school there if it was if they knew the interstate was going to be going there.
All right. Should we move on to Bob?
Yeah, I got three questions. One, are you working with the school district? McGalliard School dumping out onto Bradford Avenue right at that traffic light is a disaster. There is tons of pedestrians walking in that area when schools are letting out, and it really makes it a very dangerous intersection. Two, are you working with the state at all to revamp the Arena Drive exit? Because when you're coming off the exit and then you have cars coming down Arena Drive trying to turn onto Bradford, they have to make the jug handle there. And it's just the cars aren't stopping coming off the highway, making it very difficult. As you, again, and you'll lose the bottom of your car with the dip in that specific area. And three, I walk Arena Drive every week, and the pedestrian buttons to cross don't work at Whitehorse or Grop Avenue. And you just hit them and they just do nothing. And so I feel that there needs to be better accountability on checking to make sure those devices are working.
Bob, thank you. Matt, I can I have a few thoughts on. Of course, we absolutely are working with the school districts. They're part of our local officials grouping. They attended our local officials meeting over the summer, and we're continuing coordination as we go further on. And it's essentially a primary focus of the study is to work with the schools to address safety for for school pickup drop off, for walking, biking, and transit to school. And addressing issues. Our primary focus area is essentially our two elementary schools on the corridor. And with respect to the state, yes, we're in coordination with the state, of course. The state's the project is state and federally funded as well, and the DOT is heavily involved, and they have a project manager and a whole suite of staff that are part of our project status meetings on a biweekly basis. That are involved, and we're going to work directly with them. And at the Bradford intersection in particular, we're at the interface between state and county jurisdiction. So our mission there is to develop a concept that achieves our goals and that is acceptable to the state, so that we can implement something to address the some of the issues that you raised there. And as for your push buttons there at Whitehorse and Grop, I've noted that on my sheet here, and we can take a look at that. So Bob, thank you very much. Shall we move on? Anthony, I see that's the next hand raised. Anthony, do we have you there?
You're muted, Anthony. I don't know if.
Give Anthony another few seconds here, and otherwise, Rob. Anthony.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good evening, and thank you for having this forum. I've been a resident of Arena Drive and Federal Avenue for the past 50 years. When I purchased my home, of course, the highways, the 295s were not constructed at that time, and it was even bad back then. But since that time, it's gotten even worse. And I, for one, I see this day in and day out. The speeding. And when I say speeding, I don't mean someone driving 5 miles an hour over the speed limit. I have a radar gun that I actually timed vehicles driving 65, 70 miles an hour. And this is during school hours. I've notified the mayor's office numerous times over the past few years about these problems. I brought it to the police department and the mayor's attention. It has fallen on deaf ears. As a taxpayer, I don't appreciate being ignored, especially when it comes to safety and quality of life for residents in the area. The speeding and the illegal turns can be averted by having some police presence. And I know I've heard that mentioned before on the forum here, and I agree with that person that said that wholeheartedly. There's never a police presence. My emails to the mayor's office, my response is, I will submit it to the police department, traffic department. It's as far as it goes. No one seems to care. We're bringing to the attention of a county official, the mayor, and I've even involved local and state and federal officials, as far as Tim Hillman, who is the chief of staff for Governor Murphy, and other state representatives to get involved because of being ignored when we present the problem that no one seems to care. And this is a safety problem, and like I said, a quality of life problem for the residents. It's terrible. They have no regard for traffic signs. The illegal turns at the intersection of Bradford and Arena Drive is unbelievable. You have signs that say, do not enter. And there's cars at the intersection that actually go down that side of the jug handle with cars coming up at them. There's numerous accidents. There's so many accidents that the police department doesn't have record of all of them, because most of the accidents are settled amongst themselves. You can see they're exchanging their license, their insurance records, and they go away. That's not even what the police department knows, how many accidents. You could probably double whatever accidents they have record of. You could probably double it. And this is by a school. I don't know how the children in the school can concentrate during the day with the amount of trucks, tractor trailers rumbling down the road, the noises, the illegal mufflers and emission systems on most of these cars that these young kids have today. It's terrible. It sounds like shots actually being fired coming from the emissions. How these vehicles pass the inspection is beyond me. It's just downright terrible. I mean, it's just not just the speeding. It's the noise. It's the illegal turns, and I can go on, and no one cares about it. That's the best part. No one cares about it.
Thank you so much for your comments, Anthony. I think you are explaining exactly why this project is so important and why it's about time, especially for the children, especially for longtime residents like yourself. It's a matter of equity. It's a matter of safety. It's a matter of saving lives. So we really thank you for this input, and know that your message is reaching not only the design team that's going to be actually designing these measures, but also the county and the township. So thank you so much for your input. And
can I say one more thing, please?
Sure. Yes.
Of course.
I did have a police official tell me this not that long ago, that one of the reasons that the police department does not set up a radar station or go after some of the speeders is because there's no place for a police car to stop and hide with their radar without being seen by the motorist. And psychologically, as a motorist, if I was a speeder and I was speeding down the road, I'm going to speed because you know what? I'm going to say, I've done this hundreds of times. I've exceeded the speed limit by 20, 30 miles an hour, and I have never gotten a ticket. So psychologically, they're speeding because they know they're not going to get pulled over and they're not going to get a summons. That's psychological.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, noted. That's a really good point.
I mean, I'm not speaking for myself, but my neighbors and I, the frustration level is unbelievable when you're bringing a problem to someone's attention. That's like saying you have a neighbor that's dealing drugs and you call the police department and the police department doesn't do anything about it. It's the same exact principle.
Yep, we hear that frustration from you and from the emails that even in the short time that we've been involved with this project, we've seen emails coming through. So yes, the frustration is very palpable. I want to give Rob Riley an opportunity to speak. He's had his hand up for a while. Thank you so much, Anthony, again.
Well, I just want to say thank you to all my fellow neighbors because Anthony, I also live on Arena. I have a child that goes to McGalliard. So these concerns definitely hit home to me. Bob, I want to thank you. I totally forgot. I walk my dog on arenas. Unfortunately, I have to because I have no choice. And I totally forgot about those awful pedestrian buttons that don't work. You're right. They 100% don't work. And I feel sorry for Michelle that she can't feel safe to walk in her own neighborhood. I agree. I wouldn't let my child out of my sight one iota. But I sent an email and I want to address two other things that bother me about Arena Drive. One is it does have to do with the school. There is no left turn signal lane, protected light for anybody that during drop off or pickup at that school at Woodside at the light. It results in a lot of honking and altercations between a parent that's trying to get their child to school safely and some person that didn't get up 5 minutes early to go to work. That needs to be addressed. And the second thing I want to say is the lack of maintenance on this road. The amount of trash that blows on my front lawn that I have to pick up. I don't smoke. I don't eat fast food. I don't drink energy drinks. All this garbage is on I'm trying to not curse, all on my front lawn. And it's absolutely frustrating when you call the county and say, can you put a street sweeper in there? I have a storm drain right in front of my house. Okay. It gets clogged up constantly from debris after every storm between trash, leaves, and branches. Nothing has been done. Nothing. They do not maintain the road, and you get lip service. I have had to be out there with no assistance from police, county. I have to put my recycling cans out so that I don't get run over by a vehicle just to make sure that my property doesn't look like a POS because of this stuff. So those are my other two concerns. And again, I appreciate these residents that did show up and aired their grievances because they need to be heard.
There really seems to be a common issue here. I mean, between illegal turns, parking, speeding, there is that common issue. Now, with this project, the good news is that some of it can be accommodated through design. I mean, some of the issues that are presented, we can look at and redesign the roadway in a safer way, which at that point, it would require less enforcement. Now, we are still going to need enforcement ultimately. There's only so much we can do, but we are definitely going to be looking at ways to incorporate speed control where maybe the police aren't as necessary to make sure drivers are driving the right speed. And just to address the trash issue, with the state's MS4 permit, we are required to sweep the street. So, Rob, if you do have trash, if there are issues with drained clogged inlets, definitely reach out to us. If you can't get a hold of the highway department, reach out to somebody in our department. We can get you to the right person. Maybe they're backed up, or if it's after a storm, maybe they're
appreciate
busy.
it. Not to cut you off. My concern was specific about people on Arena going east towards Whitehorse Avenue, and it says, do not make a U-turn. Nowhere does it say you can't make a left turn, and that is a big problem. People do make a left turn from Arena into the elementary school, McGalliard, to drop off and or pick up their child either in the morning or in the afternoon. And again, that backs up traffic for miles. People get frustrated, get into altercations. There's a lot of honking, And it's super dangerous to make that left turn.
Mm-hmm.
So that needs to be addressed. Not so much this, I mean, again, the speeding and all that other stuff. Yes, but this is a specific issue that you can design around by putting in a protected light and changing the lanes slightly so that maybe that's just a left turn lane only to an extent.
Specific operational issues like that are tremendous, and we're very grateful to hear that directly from you, and something we can specifically look at to see what kind of countermeasures we can deploy to solve that issue.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move forward through the rest of our hands before we run short on time here.
Yes,
Catherine D, I see you next. Thanks, Patty. Sorry about that. Catherine, are you with us?
I'm with you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Okay. I live on Highland Avenue near Yardville Heights Elementary School. And I want to first say thank you. I don't know who was responsible for it, but thank you for all the new light system at Yardville on Highland Avenue and South Broad Street. The lighting system is better. We have pedestrian, warnings as to when the light is going to change. And one of the best features is the left-hand turn now from South Broad Street if you're heading toward Grops Lake to make a left-hand turn onto Highland Avenue, because we always have a lot of cars that want to go up into Highland Avenue to go into the neighborhood. So that has helped quite a bit. So whoever was responsible for doing that, it's much, much appreciated. I also want to say that cars seem to run the light there at that intersection. This past week, I had two neighbors who were on Highland Avenue to make a left-hand turn, and when the light changed, a car, went through the light, and that happened the next day to another neighbor. It's not the first time I've heard this from my neighbors. It happens quite often. So we do have quite a few people who are running the lights at that intersection. Also, and I don't know, I end up calling the county twice a year to maintain the growth of the shrubs and weeds that grow at that intersection where the kids cross the street to go over to the Yardville Heights Elementary School. It gets 4 to 5 feet high at times. The kids can't see. I saw one day where a kid stepped kind of over toward the curb so he could see if any cars were coming from Broad Street where Grops Lake is. And thank God his mother was with him and grabbed him by the shoulder. So I don't know if something else could be done at that intersection to control that besides, letting that grow up, continuously. And like I said, I have to call at least twice a year for them to come and cut. And the county does do that. But it's like there should be another answer to that. The other thing is that when people are coming off of 195 and merging onto Broad Street near Yardville Heights Elementary School, where Grops Lake is, that is, somebody pointed that out earlier, you have this traffic all of a sudden now having to form 2 lanes into one. And the cars that are coming off of 195 are usually coming at a pretty good clip because they just came off a major highway where you're doing 60 miles an hour, and they don't tend to always slow down. And so is there a possibility that there could be some kind of flashing light that could be, installed when schools are, are getting in, out of school, or when they're coming to school? Maybe there's something else that could be alert to the cars to slow down, because it does jam up, and I've seen cars almost get rear-ended all the time. So that's just a suggestion, and thank you for doing this program. It's much appreciated.
Thank you for your comments, Catherine. Yeah, Tom, I'm wondering if the bushes, if that's in a project area, if that's something we could replace as part of the project, make maybe a shorter shrubbery, something that's good for sight lines.
Yeah, absolutely. I've noted the corner. We'll take a look and see what we can do there.
Great, thank you. I think Tammy is next for a question.
Yeah, I just want to let you guys know that I put a bunch of stuff in the Q&A for you, so you can grab that. And I'll give you all a challenge that you go faster. Because in the timeline you put together, it's approximately about 5 years, right, before you can implement. And I get this takes a long time to do, but in working with the people who are doing the Street Smart program, maybe there are things that you can implement that take little effort but have huge impact. So if you talk to the other municipalities in the state of New Jersey who have implemented that program and the positive effect that that's had on their municipalities as it pertains to pedestrian death rates, as to vehicle death rates, is amazing. So please connect with them and go faster, because I think we tend, and I get all the red tape stuff, we tend to take too long in the state of New Jersey to implement things that really have a positive impact for residents. And we have to change that attitude. We can't just say, oh, it's government, it takes this long. No, because when we want to, the government can move their butts to get stuff done, right? They can. So let's make this a massive focus to change the paradigm for residents and to change the death rate for pedestrians in Hamilton, because we already have 10 this year, just this year. That's a lot. So thank you so much. I'm really happy you guys are focused on this.
Yeah, thank you, Tammy. I wish I knew more about the Street Smart program. Maybe one of my fellow county planners or engineers knows more, but it's a program we're definitely going to look into. It's something, again, we work with the TMA very closely with our towns. So if there's steps in the immediate future we could do, maybe there's something we could do before we actually launch into this project.
Thank you. I think Charles is next.
Yes, how you doing?
Do I have to hit the microphone again?
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we
Yes,
can.
we can hear you. Mhm.
Oh, good. I wanted to bring us down to an intersection we haven't talked about yet. I live at the corner of Hempstead and Arena, and I think I saw a bunch of you standing out there in the summer looking at it in hard hats. Might have been some of you, but I've been here since '95 and probably had hundreds of accidents at my corner. At least 5 vehicles on my lawn. And lately, the last fatality we had here, the gentleman died on my lawn. And
Charles, I'm
after
so
that, it
sorry.
took a while, but I did notice we changed the intersection. We put reduced down the single lanes, put left turn signals in, or not signals, left turn to make left turns. I'm wondering, I mean, I will tell you that when that happened, and I know there's a name for it, when you reduce all those lanes down to less. I think I read it somewhere on your website. There's a name for it. Somebody probably knows what it is, but
road diet.
Yeah, but that actually did work better in terms of accidents. Instead of 3 a month, maybe I only have 1. But again, the big concern is the speeding coming off of 195 down the ramp. Nobody goes 40 miles an hour, I noticed, but so it is better, but I still see people taking their lives in their hand crossing, and I hear horns beeping and blaring all the time from my window here. And it is better, but I'm wondering, any part of this concept and development plan is to add a light to this intersection? So I know you talked about doing, making where all the lights are right now, making those better. I think you mentioned earlier, but is there anything about actually adding a light to this intersection, Hempstead?
Hempstead is one of the locations we're looking at for some kind of control. I wasn't sure if we're looking at a light or other improvements, but it isn't an intersection we've been working on at the county. I mean, we did make those slight improvements a few years ago. We have put in a partial road diet. It hasn't extended past a certain point, but the road diet is something we are considering for a larger stretch of Arena Drive.
Yeah.
Especially when we get into alternatives analysis come like November, December.
Yeah, and that Hempstead is so wide, just even people, pedestrians trying to cross Hempstead, you know, from the one corner. I mean, it's crazy because cars that are coming up to go up towards 195 to cut up Hempstead to go up 195, they fly around that corner. And I tell people, you got to look. I'm outside there looking. I say, this look behind you to make sure there's no cars coming.
Mhm.
It's just really needs some kind of work there. I'm not
Yeah,
sure
Hempstead
what,
that is a major focus due to the size of that intersection.
Yeah.
Yeah, ways to, we're looking at ways to address it from a geometric perspective to really, just induce safety. So,
Okay.
Hempstead is a major focus. Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Charles, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think part of the concern too is Hempstead was seen as a cut through to get to South Broad Street, kind of bypass the spaghetti with 195, essentially.
Yes, thank you. I think Anthony is next in the queue.
Yes. When was the last time a traffic study was done in the area of Arena Drive and Bradford Avenue? Because I've noticed just in the last year or so, there's been a tremendous amount of traffic coming down some of the side streets onto the access road of Arena Drive, going to the light at the intersection of Arena and Bradford. And I was just wondering when the last time a traffic study was done to measure the amount of traffic that actually goes down that access road of Arena Drive to the main access road of Arena.
It's a good question. I'm not sure if somebody from our engineering department could answer that one.
Because I was in contact with the Department of Transportation, the New Jersey Department of Transportation, because I was having a problem because my house, where my house is situated, is at the light of Arena and Bradford Avenue, on the corner of Federer and Arena. The cars were backing up in front of my driveway, which made it very difficult to exit and enter my driveway. I have to say the Department of Transportation did their best to try to resolve the problem. They put up signs saying, "Do not block my driveway," which of course, to be honest with you, was a joke because the motorists just laughed at it because no one paid attention to it. They put a box line on the street so that in front of my driveway, an X box, so that the cars wouldn't stop in front of my driveway, but that didn't work. They resorted to do a timing. They put a variable timing device in the traffic signal at the intersection of Arena and Bradford. And I have to say, it has helped the situation somewhat. So I'm very thankful to the Department of Transportation for their help in that particular matter. They were a big help. But as far as the speeding goes, they told me there was nothing that they could actually do about it. And I talked to several traffic engineers from the Department of Transportation, and they told me there was nothing they could actually do about the speeding in Arena Drive. There was a conversation I had with one of the traffic engineers where I brought up the fact maybe there's two lights on Arena Drive, one by the school, and there's one at Bradford Avenue. Maybe changing the timing of the red lights so that they go more quicker, the red lights change more quicker, that would slow some of the traffic on the main road of Arena Drive. They would have to, of course, stop, hopefully, for the red light, and that would slow up some of the speeding, I believe, on the main drag of Arena Drive, going by the school, heading towards the 295 North and 295 South on-ramps. I believe, and I think the person that I talked to, who I don't want to mention their names right now, they kind of agreed that that might be a possibility to help with speeding. So I thought I'd just throw that out to you guys, that I did have a conversation with them, and I think that would help some of the situation, along with the police presence, of course.
Anthony, I just did some checking. This is Matthew Lawson, the Assistant Planning Director for the county. And in 2022, it was probably NJDOT that did a traffic count there. It's a full turning movement count.
Okay.
And I'm sure that that Michael Baker already has that count in their possession and can consider that when they're looking at traffic operations there. the interstate interchanges are particularly tough for us because we have to work with the Department of Transportation from the state.
Right.
And they're bound in turn by federal requirements. But we're very much aware that passage through that interchange is a challenge for people on Arena Drive and close to the school there at Bradford. So very concerned about safety. Obviously, that's why we're doing the study, but I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think Nancy was next in the queue.
Is everybody can hear me now? And
Yes.
I make sure that I stay, because evidently when I kept taking it off, it was making me muted. So I guess it's going to stay that way now that I'm talking. Okay. Hi. Pat's here as well as myself, Nancy. We live in the Broad Street Park area, so we're close to where where Park Avenue and Broad Street intersect, and we're very familiar with Broad Street. We go up and down it all the time, all day. And I also just wanted to agree with a lot of people that are saying about the police presence and a lot of things that were already said. I am in wholehearted agreement with everything. For us personally, one of the big things that that really I think is an issue is I did see somebody's comment about the White Horse Circle, but I think the White Horse Circle, I'm kind of getting used to it, but where 206 comes up into the circle, I wish they could have had the stop back a little further. Way too close to people coming there. I never know if they're going to stop or not. And it's pretty scary. And I'm surprised there's not more accidents. I don't see as many accidents, but and I think, we travel a lot, and I really do think that one of the biggest things that people need to do, and I think because people just drive too fast, we are just too hyper on this East Coast, is that this all speed limits should be lowered. They should be back to where we were. I think we should be at 55 on interstates, not 65. And the stretch of Broad Street, which is one of my things I put in the question part, is that why are we not talking about anything about Broad Street? You're only talking about Arena Drive. So I think on Broad Street we've had a lot of accidents. I think the biggest mistake that was ever made, it was when I think it was Gilmore at the time. They did some kind of Broad Street beautification. What was the worst thing that was ever done? Putting that bricking down the middle of the highway with those ugly trees that all died, and some of them are still alive, but it's a real problem. I don't think people can see right. And one of the other comments I made in the Q&A was that I think the lighting, I go down Broad Street and I can't believe the number of street lights that are out. I mean, somebody just needs to be, I don't know who's responsible for doing that, but somebody needs to call PSE&G and tell them to fix them. And there's so many of them. And then some of those were those places you were just talking about that are dark. The street lights are out. I mean, the thing happens in my neighborhood. I just go and look at the telephone pole and get the number off of it. And you can just send an email or a text to PSE&G and they're out within a couple of days to fix it. So it's, those kind of things are an easy fix. Let's see, what was the other thing? And I only, I printed off the document that was on your link, and I'm so confused at one of the paragraphs at the bottom saying that South Broad Street is a relatively low traffic volumes. I don't understand how that could be considered low traffic volume. That street is so busy, and I'm talking especially from this White Horse Circle all the way down to Liberty into the city lanes is just unbelievable. The roads are in just such terrible condition. And I'd like somebody, if they could, when I'm done, address why we're not talking about Broad Street in any way. And then the other thing I had was, let's see. And I think another issue along Broad Street is that there are so many people wait for the bus. And I see people, just running across the highway in the middle to try to get over to the bus stop. So I don't know how that gets fixed, but it's almost like there needs to be more places for the pedestrians to get across somehow. I mean, a lot of big towns have places where the cars have to stop to let the people cross the highway. To be, that's a really big project. And I guess the other thing is, you're trying to make a lot of these places, a lot of these areas safe for bicycles and pedestrians. And I can't imagine how they could become safe. The volume of traffic on these roads and how fast people go, it's I don't know how people can even do that and feel comfortable or safe to be able to walk or ride a bike. It's just pretty bad. But I appreciate that we get to be part of this. I've actually never participated in anything like this before, and I'm glad I got to do this. It actually came up on the Hamilton Township website. I get their emails there like every other day, and it was on there. It's been on there. It was on there again to register to come be part of this. So I appreciate that you were able to do it. And if someone could just address the South Broad Street thing, if you're doing anything about anything on that highway, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. I'd like to speak to that. This is Matt Lawson again, Mercer County Planning Assistant Director. And one of the issues that we face here, and I talked about the interchange at McGalliard at Bradford with 295. But US 206, when it comes through Whitehorse Circle onto South Broad Street, that is state US or NJDOT jurisdiction. It's their roadway up until the border with Trenton. And so the part of the problem here is that there are jurisdictional differences. So the Arena and South Broad segments that we're considering are except for those NJDOT interchanges, they're under county ownership. But South Broad from Whitehorse Circle into the city is under NJDOT ownership. It's a US highway. Unfortunately, when it hits the city itself, it becomes a street owned and operated by the city of Trenton. And that goes back to the turn of the previous century. So those jurisdictional differences really create problems for us because we can't, we have to work cooperatively with those other agencies to try and get things done. And one of the things that we're doing here on Arena and South Broad is we're trying to engage federal transportation dollars to be able to make significant and costly changes. And that requires exactly this kind of public outreach. But in order to use those dollars, we have to go through the federal process. So a previous resident was saying, why can't we do things faster? Well, at Hempstead, we did things faster because we could do it simply with paint and signs. And so some improvements we can do fast, but we still need to study and make sure that they're in compliance with federal requirements, that they're in compliance with the will of the community. And so, to hear about Whitehorse Circle and improvements that the state could have made to the operation of Whitehorse Circle, I think those are valuable comments. And when we get to presenting alternatives for this corridor, I really hope that you people will come back out and give us straight feedback about the ideas that we're presenting. How do road diets work from your perspective? How do roundabouts work from your perspective? A roundabout, compared to a traffic signal, it's a much safer way of controlling the operations of an intersection. A typical traffic signal with a lane approaching in each direction, for streets coming in, there are 32 points at which vehicles can come into conflict with each other. At a roundabout, that's reduced to 8. And so by choosing the traffic control, by reducing the number of traffic lanes with a road diet, we can do substantial safety improvements that will save people's lives. And that's really what this study is about. But we need to go through it carefully. And that's what Baker is helping us do, is to approach this thoughtfully with I love the input that Hamilton residents bring out to these meetings, because it's passionate and concerned about safety. And that's what we're passionate about too.
I have one more comment to make.
Sure.
Today is the first day I noticed it. I came up from Whitehorse Avenue. I made the left onto Arena, and they just repaved it. That's all been repaved from Whitehorse Avenue to Gropp. And I went, whoa, what did they do here? on the left lane, they have these arrows that go one way and then the other way, and then one way, the other way, and then it's a left turn signal. I'm thinking, like, that's not, I don't know how that's going to work. People are just going to get in that lane and pretend that it doesn't even appear on the roadway and just do what they always did. They're not going to say they're supposed to be there only, maybe mostly to go left. Maybe they can go back right. But it was just interesting that I saw that done. Is that like a road diet? Is that what that is?
I'm not familiar with the exact location, but I've seen those markings. And typically that's an indication that you should either get into the through lane, into the left-hand lane to go through the intersection, or to make a right turn. So that it's an indication that that lane is going to end.
Yeah.
And you have to do something to respond to that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And thank you for the explanation about jurisdiction. It makes all the sense in the world and can help me calm down.
Yeah, and that's why it looks like it does. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. I see Rob Riley has a question as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, so after you guys take our feedback, what's next steps? When's the next meeting? And then what is the agenda on a very broad overview? What is the goal for the next meeting?
Sure, I can help answer that question. So we're here at the fall 2024, we're at this middle box. We're performing our stakeholder and public meeting. So what we'll do is after this meeting, we incorporate your feedback. We make sure that our purpose and need statement and our goals and objectives are settled. We finalize those with the project team through addressing your comments. There's a few other things that do happen. Of course, I should be remiss. This recording gets posted to the website. We have a comment period that lasts for 30 days. So encourage your neighbors and others to reach us via our email and to provide your comments. We incorporate those comments. We make sure our purpose and need statement is correct and accurate. And then from that point, we've concluded our collection of existing conditions. We've heard from local officials, stakeholders, and the public, and the project team in coordination with those local officials and stakeholders, we begin to develop alternatives to address these issues on the roadway. And the next time we will reach back out, we will meet with local officials and stakeholders in the winter period of 2025. And you folks as stakeholders, as direct residents, will have an opportunity to attend that meeting. And that 600 homes that were mailed to will be mailed to again during that stakeholder period. And then we after that period, we meet and we review our alternatives development. So we look at our homework and we see what concepts we've developed to address the issues that we see on the corridor. And following that, we incorporate feedback from those meetings from local officials and stakeholders once again into the process. So it's another loop, and we refine our concepts. And then we select our preliminary preferred alternatives, our preliminary choices for what we feel are the preferred choices for the corridor. And then we present them again to the public. And that meeting will also be held in the spring. All of these will be held before May of 2025. When the project is concluded, we wrap up our report, we collect all our findings, and then the project receives, we request resolution of support from the township and the county, and then the project eventually will move on to the next phase.
Tom, do you mind if I add just a little bit to that?
Of course.
So yeah, the next meeting, and Tom explained the schedule well, but the next meeting is really to review the alternatives, the ways of responding to the issues that we see and that you've pointed out on the roadway, and how do we deal with that? Do we narrow the road? Do we simply bring it down to one lane in each direction? Do we put in curb bulb outs? Do we put in roundabouts, a string of roundabouts? Do we, and so the trade-offs among the different alternatives is really what we consider in the next meeting. We consider cost, we consider the safety benefits of those different alternatives, and the environmental impacts, the noise impacts, the impacts to speeding and non-compliance with posted speeds, and consider with your feedback which alternative is the preferred alternative to advance towards design. And I think it was explained earlier in the meeting, there's a couple of stages of design. Preliminary design or preliminary engineering is basically looking at that preferred alternative to see, can we really do it? And what will it cost? Final design, once that is preliminary engineering has decided what we can actually do. Final design is to figure out, where do we park the trucks? Where do we, how do we pull this off? And that will result in construction documents that we go out to bid for and go to construction. So it's a long process because there's so many different things to consider. But what comes at the end of preliminary engineering is the approved environmental document. That's a little bit further down in that second column. But the environmental document basically reports on all of those impacts and how we're going to mitigate those impacts relative to the benefits that might be achieved in the project. So following the federal process, as this project does, takes time. And there may be things that we can do on a shorter timeline. If we decide to advance this project without federal dollars, we might be able to make some of those improvements faster. We'll be doing it on the backs of local taxpayers like all of us. But we may be able to do it faster and cheaper. So there are a number of other steps. There will be other opportunities for public engagement in preliminary engineering before we move into final design, basically to review what we've got and how we're advancing it. And the county, for my part, is always open to feedback and very interested in hearing from citizens about what the issues are and how we might address them. I think of myself, I came into this job as an uneducated citizen about how traffic works and understanding it better, understanding why speed limits are set the way they are, how the traffic controls work, has made me a much, much more cautious driver, aware of the value of the safety signs, the speed limit signs, the warning signs about turns and turn operations. So you guys too are amateur engineers driving the roadways, thinking about what can be improved, and we're very interested in hearing your opinions. So I'm happy to be able to support this project. I'm very pleased with Michael Baker as a qualified firm to advance this project and to develop a concept for how we can make it a safer corridor and safer for all users. That's one of our primary goals here, is not just for motor vehicles, but for school kids, for people on bikes. And thinking about Arena and South Broad, these segments of roadway that are under county jurisdiction, how do we make this safe for all users? How do we make it a corridor that allows people to get around town without using a car? And if we can achieve that goal, then I think we'll have achieved the purpose and need for this project. But public input is very important, and I appreciate everyone coming out for this meeting and letting us know your concerns. Thanks.
I wanted to add our 2 cents on the community engagement side. I just wanted to reiterate that all of these comments have been, we've been taking notes of absolutely all the comments. You've actually pointed out some areas that the design team either had not fully considered, or it was really good to hear confirmation about some of the other ones as well. And all of these comments will be incorporated for the next phase. And we really would invite you to come to the next meeting, where we'll be able to show and walk you all through each of the options. It'll be an in-person and much more interactive experience, where you'll be able to see and ask questions about them. So we encourage you to tell your neighbors and reach out and stay informed through the website as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll do one more plug. What I'll pull up here is our survey. I'd like to let me open Arena Broad Safety and take us to the website. I'll show everybody the survey, because that's the last thing I'll ask folks to do is before you leave tonight. And you can visit our project website, of course, mercercounty.org/Arena Broad Safety. And you can see our virtual meeting advertisement at the bottom of this page. We're going to move it up, I think, tomorrow if we can. we have our a link to our survey. So you can click anywhere in this image here, and it'll take us to it'll launch our survey. You'll have to just get redirected to the survey page. You enter your name and email, and you can tell us the primary reason you travel within the study area, how you typically travel within the study area, your opinion on what the top issues may be, how safe do you feel when driving in the study area, how about walking or bicycling in the study area, what improvements would you encourage for safe bicycling and walking? A successful project recommendation would fill in that question for us. And then we have some open-ended questions here about specific locations in the study area that need safety improvements. And of course, we've heard from many of you already. Are there any organizations or individuals you'd suggest for possible stakeholders? And any other comments and questions you may have. And it's another great way to provide feedback to the project team. But we appreciate you so much for joining us tonight. And helping us better understand Arena Drive, South Broad Street, your community, and our community, and giving us the opportunity to make this project better. So with that, we can check again here to see if we have any other extra questions that we need to address before we conclude. We're coming close to 8 p.m. I'm going to just check the Q&A box because it's possible that we have some folks that have dropped some comments in the Q&A box that we haven't heard from. But I'm seeing familiar names there. Lack of signage and speed. I think we have our bases covered. I do see a comment from Paul, and I don't believe we've heard from Paul. Can speed limit be decreased on Arena Drive? 40 is too high. And I believe everyone else that's listed on here, we've heard from Mr. Tim Brill from NJ Conservation Foundation is also delivering us a comment here. What are the traffic counts and speed limits at different points in this corridor? We'll have more of that information to be shared with local officials and stakeholders, and we can report on that, and happy to answer that question through some postings to our website or otherwise, as we didn't get deeper into that data today.
Hey, Tom, before you conclude, can I say a couple of words?
Of course.
Good evening, folks. This is the county engineer. My name is Bassett. I go by Sunny. I've heard all your comments. Something that is somewhat interesting as an engineer to me is that for the first time in the long time, I would say probably in my career, which has spanned over 35 years, that we are allowed to change how we evaluate these roads and what conditions we can impose, thanks to the 11th edition of the MUTCD manual. In the past, we were tied down to the 85th percentile. For the first time, we have been relieved of that burden, and we have been given the freedom to decide on the basis of usage, especially the pedestrian and the bicyclist. Anybody who knows me knows that I am a huge proponent of those two modes, and I will do whatever I can within my limited power to make it happen. Having said that, the speeding is, and guys, ladies and gentlemen, take it the way I'm looking at it. I live in Ewing. I don't live in Hamilton. At 7 in the morning, those are your neighbors who are driving fast. I'm hoping the message goes to them, please slow down. We live here. You all live there. We will do what we have to do, what we can do to bring the speeds down. I am very much committed to doing that. I would love to see more bicyclists and more pedestrian, more micromobility. That is one of my stated goals, and God willing, it will happen. Maybe not to the extent you are hoping for, maybe better than that. Let's see where the results go. But I greatly appreciate all the input we have received. I'm hoping that the town officials also listen to the recordings and hear the passion coming out of for the residents. I mean, one person I would love to meet as Rob. I don't know who you are, bud, but love to hang with you. Because I see this is passion that I'm hearing, and we feel for our communities.
Let's go
And
grab a beer. We can grab a beer, no problem.
all right, okay, sounds like a plan, bud. We can do that. I'll be more than happy to. My treat.
I think somebody has my email. You get that from them, and we'll meet up. We'll have a beer. We'll talk. I work with engineers all day long, so I speak your language.
All right, sounds like a plan, guys. Thank you so very much. God bless you all. Have an awesome evening, and let's stay in touch and make sure we make our homes, our areas, where communities where we live safer for ourselves. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, everyone. I don't want to jump the gun, but if anyone has any last input, we could hear that. Otherwise, we're about at the conclusion of the meeting, and we want to thank you again. So we'll look forward to our continued outreach, and we'll see everyone at our future meetings in the spring.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. Thank
Good
you.
rest of your
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Mhm.